we people were founded by a monk at the time of the French Revolution. They were destroying all the convents and monasteries. And this monk, Dom Mensar, his name was, in Belgium, they had to flee the monastery, and many of them were killed. He escaped, and he went to a town in Belgium called Namur, kind of a big city. And
it's on the border with the Netherlands, right there?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where our sisters began.
Really?
But he was involved in founding our group, as well as this other group called Notre Dame de Namur.
Okay.
So we're sort of like cousins.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Are a lot of convents like that? Because I know there's a convent in Hamburg that I've gone to a couple times. Do you have any...
Franciscan sisters?
Yeah. Do you have any connection with them?
No, not as a relationship or anything, but we had we have contact through things we do, and connections we make. Sometimes we may go to things, where we meet the others.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we know people, in different groups. That's one nice thing. Congo, in Rwanda and Cameroon, as I mentioned, but we also have sisters now in Tanzania. And so there are 4 countries where we have a lot of sisters. We have a lot of sisters in Brazil, too.
Is it safer now? Do you work through the different governments in the area to do mission work there?
It's safer now, but in the Congo, there's a lot of unrest. Mm-hmm. Rwanda is pretty calm. I mean, it really is calm. And, you might say safe. I mean, they have a long way to go yet, with the spirit of forgiveness, because they're working a lot on reconciliation. Because, I mean, here you have sometimes a sister of one tribe, and maybe members of her family or acquaintances of the other tribe killed some of her family. So you have, you have to live with that and learn to forgive. Well, that's quite something. But anyway, it's safe. It's pretty safe. Congo has got a lot going on. I mean, they've got rebellions in some parts of the country. It's an immense country, for one thing, and it's really hard to govern because it's so big. And you've got the infrastructure, like the roads and all that, they're not great. Travel, is more difficult. So.
Did you have hospitals while you were there?
One of our sisters, we have 2 sisters, let me think now. At the moment, we have one who's a doctor. She's Rwandan. We had a Belgian sister who was a doctor. She has since died. She worked in a hospital, wasn't our hospital, but she worked in it. It was right near our mission. We had a mission in the Congo, that's where I first went, that was right next to the Jesuits' mission. They had a mission there too. It's really like, if you picture, like, let's say you're in an airplane or in a helicopter looking down, you'd see jungle all around, and carved out of it, you'd see these 2 missions and a river.
Yeah.
Right nearby. That's kind of how the setup was. We were surrounded by the jungle. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, when I think of it, sometimes I think, wow, I actually was there. It was part of my life. I don't regret anything that I did, the years I spent. When I went, I thought I was going forever. I was very young and idealistic, and I thought I'm going forever, But then I discovered after a period of time, like close to those 18 years, that I had what you might call a temporary missionary vocation. I was meant to be there for a time. And then I felt it was time for me to come back and live here again, because I had lived out of this country longer than I'd lived in it.
Was it easy to see the progress of your work within whatever villages you were working in?
Yeah, it was. It was because we did a lot of evangelization, a lot of religious education. Well, we did teaching, we had schools. So you could really see the advances. I mean, educating the young people, so because they were the future of the country, although there were a lot of problems with the government. At one time when I was in the Congo, at a certain period, the government was run by a dictator, and he proclaimed himself the second Jesus Christ. He was just really, just overwhelmed with his own power. And so what he did, he wanted all crucifixes removed from schools, and he would send around what he called the Revolutionary Guard. They could arrive at your school at any time, and when they did, everybody had to go out of the classrooms into, we always had these big spaces, these big areas. You might call it a courtyard area, but it was big. Everybody'd have to go out there, and they would teach them dances and slogans that were not very good. And we were powerless. We couldn't do a thing.
Did you see that a lot, where was the Revolutionary Army composed of a lot of children?
No, actually it wasn't that type. It was actual men.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That you're talking about, that happened in Rwanda.
Did it?
A lot of those people who went around killing with machetes and guns were children.
Yeah.
12 years old, drugged.
Yeah,
and
scary.
Yeah. And I mean, they didn't really know what they were doing, but they were under the influence of hatred and drugs. Yeah. What a time, huh?
How long did you live in Africa?
10 years. I was I started out in the Congo, and then I went to Rwanda, and then I went to Cameroon. And then from there, I went to Brazil. And then eventually I came back to the United States from Brazil.
What were the conditions like in Rwanda when you were there?
In 1994, Rwanda suffered a horrific genocide.
Yeah.
But I left before that. I wasn't there at that time. I was there in the 80s. And so, I didn't experience any of that. But our sisters experienced, an awful time. We have a lot of sisters there. And of course, they were threatened constantly to be killed because our sisters belonged to both tribes, and they were living together. And so the tribe that was killing the other tribe would come all the time. These militia groups would come to the house. We had all the sisters gathered in one location. We were able to get them all into one location. And two of our sisters came from the United States to be with them, one who was in charge of all of us, to try to give them comfort and a feeling, it was terribly dangerous, a feeling of support, because it was terrifying. And every night, they said, every night they'd come to the door and knock and bring the sisters out and threaten to kill them. And they'd have to bargain. And so one sister in particular, who was of that tribe that was doing a lot of the killing, was instrumental in saving the others by her deliberations with them. And so finally the United Nations was able to, with negotiations, it took a lot of doing, they brought in the dead of night, 3 helicopters. And we had also hidden a couple of women in our house, dressed them as sisters, because that was dangerous. If they found out that you hid anybody, that was instant death. But they did it anyway. And a couple sisters of another group, too, who managed to escape. you know, and their group was being killed. So these helicopters descended in the middle of the night and airlifted all our sisters out of Rwanda. I remember seeing that on national television, like sitting there in front of the television watching this on national news, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew all those sisters, and there they were coming out of the helicopters, you know, and we didn't lose one single one. Not one, with all the deaths, but they lost many members of their families. Some of them, almost everybody.